I've been very concerned about Iran, since the revolution and the hostage crisis, and very involved in investigating terrorism. So I was very aware of the fact that Iran, unfortunately, under the mullahs, has become the biggest state sponsor of terrorism in the world, and probably one of the most difficult enemies of the United States, and I think of a great many of our allies. And a number of years ago, I was invited to speak in front of the United Nations to a group that was protesting Ahmadinejad. And I gave a talk, and I met the people that were involved, and then we talked some more, and I found out what they were all about, studied their history, saw how unfair it was that they had been designated as a terrorist group as part of I thought, a very unwise effort by the Clinton administration to ingratiate themselves to Iran, almost a little bit like what's going on now. A so-called moderate had taken over Iran, and the Clinton administration thought that they could ingratiate themselves by making the MEK a terrorist group, when in fact all the MEK really was an opponent of this terrible regime in Iran. I thought their cause was a very, very just one, a very good one. I studied their principles, saw principles that were completely consistent with what we would like to see in the Middle East: democracy, freedom for women, freedom of religion, elected governments, respect for private property. And then I saw the broad range of people that support it, from Republicans, Democrats, generals, former chiefs of staff. And then as I've gotten more involved, it's become a real passion. I mean, the people that were in Ashraf, many of whom now are so-called Camp Liberty, are some of the bravest people I've ever heard about. And I think that having an alternative to the regime in Iran is exactly the kind of pressure to put on them. And I'm only disappointed that my government hasn't utilized that more as a way of trying to avoid what seems inevitable, which is a nuclear Iran, and then one where we might have to take military action.
Yeah, we're going to come down to Liberty and the attacks carried out against Ashraf and Liberty. Would you think that was a betrayal of everything that America stood for?
Well, I think it is.
Allowing it to happen?
I think it is. I believe it is a betrayal, and it's even clearer than that. The American military, therefore America, made a promise to the people at Ashraf that if they laid down their arms and acted peacefully, they'd be protected by America. Well, of course, when we failed to negotiate a status of forces agreement with Iran, when Vice President Biden failed to negotiate that, we left these people with no protection. We left them to the tender mercies of Maliki, who became a client of Iran. So to me, the honor and of the United States is at stake here, which is why I think you hear so many of the generals speak at gatherings like this, because they feel personally betrayed. They made the promise. Many of them are now retired. They can't carry out that promise, but then they'd expect their government would carry out their promise. And I think this is a moral obligation that America has.
You offered many times on public platforms you offered to go to Ashraf, you offered to go to Liberty. Why do they refuse you?
Well, they refuse me and they refuse everyone else. I mean, I offered to go. I'm a Republican, so maybe they didn't want me to go because I'm not of the same political party as the president. But Ed Rendell has offered to go. He was the head of the Democratic National Committee. Patrick Kennedy, and they won't allow them to go either. Now, if you're telling us you don't want us to go look at particularly Liberty before people were sent there, we were asking, demanding to go and look at it first. If you don't want me to go look at it, you're just telling me that there must be something wrong with it. And I said back then, when we were being refused, that I believed this was going to become a concentration camp. And some people got really upset with me. When I met here with Martin Kubler, he was very insulted that I described it as a concentration camp. And we didn't start off with a very good conversation, because I thought he was being totally disingenuous when he was describing the little spaces that people would have and the small amount of water they'd be allowed. And it seemed to me that this is the man the United Nations has to deal with human rights and human dignity. I mean, the man was a disgrace.
He carried on by recently claiming he was in the European Parliament, and he claimed that the leadership in Ashraf and also the leadership of MEK do not allow the residents to cooperate. And this is the kind of allegations which was made in the past. But the State Department, your State Department, are making these allegations. What do you think about the substance of these allegations?
Well, first of all, I think that Martin Kulber is completely in the pocket of Iran and Iraq. I think his wife being an ambassador to Iraq immediately creates a conflict of interest, and the UN should have gotten rid of him immediately. The man is obviously too close to Iran, to the Maliki government, and has no objectivity about this. The people of Ashraf and Liberty are dealing with a very, very fundamental problem, which is how to stay alive in the middle of a country where, doing the bidding of Iran, people want to kill them, and have already killed, unfortunately, too many of them. So how you cannot have empathy and understanding for these people means you're not suited to the job of being in any way involved with a humanitarian effort for the United Nations. I don't know what else you'd call him. Well, I don't know what else you'd call him, but he's certainly the contradiction of a humanitarian.
Now, as you mentioned, in the past there has been difficulties with MEK being in the United States list of terrorist organizations. Now they're delisted. Why don't the Americans exert pressure on the Iraqis to stop these attacks, and the Americans using their leverage in Iraq to force the Maliki government to stop these attacks?
Look, those are very good questions, some of which I don't know the answer to, and that puzzled me also. The reason that we don't use our leverage with Iraq to get them to do more for the people of Liberty and Ashraf is, so we're without leverage in that sense. Now, we do provide money, we do have a certain amount of suasion, and we don't use it for that purpose. But you'd have to go ask the Obama administration why they don't do that. It makes no sense to me that we would not be standing up for these people, protecting these people. After all, they're on our side. They would like to see an overthrow of a regime that has killed numerous Americans, including many American soldiers in Iraq. Well, what our goal should be regime change in Iran. Iran has been a menace to the world since the first Ayatollah took over. This new election, where they describe this man as a moderate, is really just propaganda. I mean, he's hardly a moderate. He was very close to Ayatollah Khomeini. He was Ayatollah Khomeini's representative on the National Security Council. He was there when that council organized to kill numerous Jewish people in Argentina. Argentinian prosecutors have named him as one of the people who was, I think 80 people died in that attack, and 400 or 500 were injured. He was there when Khobar Towers was attacked. He was a total engaged in total deception when he was a nuclear negotiator. He even brags about it in one of his memoirs by saying that he was just keeping everybody calm while they were going ahead and moving forward with their nuclear program. So why we would describe this man as a moderate is a grave concern. What it says to me is that they're planning to pretend to negotiate with us while they become nuclear. And we should be very worried about that.
Well, this is what I was going to ask you. Do you think the Iranians actually have the will to abandon and surrender their nuclear program?
I don't know, but they've never been pushed hard enough to really find out.
What should be done?
Well, I think it should be very, very clear in the minds of the Iranian mullahs and the people who control Iran that if they get to the point of becoming nuclear, America will take a very, very serious action, hopefully not military action, but if necessary, military action to prevent them. I think a way of avoiding that would be supporting a group like the MEK as an alternative to the government in Iran. I think there'd be nothing that would irritate the Iranian government more than the United States saying, we support Madam Rajavi as the president-elect. We support a government built along the lines of her 10 principles, which are exactly the 10 principles that would exist in the United States. If that effort could be successful, of course, that would be wonderful for the world. But even if it couldn't be immediately successful, it would be a source of tremendous irritation and a bargaining point with the Iranian regime. And I really urge us to do that.
This is the last question. If the West, and in particular the United States, don't side with the aspirations of the Iranian people for democratic change, how do you see the outlook for the Middle East?
Well, I think it's very hard when the United States isn't there. I mean, this issue came up in 2009, which is about the time I first got involved in studying about the MEK, and because it seemed to me outrageous that when this movement started in protest over the election back then, that the American president was silent.
Best one I've ever been to. They say there are 100,000 chairs out in the audience, that the place has been full, that it's the best speakers, the speeches have been better. Mrs. Rajavi's speech was excellent, superb. I don't know how we're ever going to do better than this. This has set a new standard for us. This is a very positive development, and I'm sure that the sand is running out for the regime in Tehran.
So what's your opinion about the dialogue going on in Europe for the nuclear talk? What do you think is going to last long?
A number of speakers have referred to the nuclear talks, that we have to keep Tehran from getting nuclear weapons. That would be a new disaster for the Middle East if Iran, the regime, got nuclear weapons. Absolutely agree.
Thank you very much. Do you have something to add?
Well, no, just to congratulate Mrs. Rajavi and all the people who come from all over the world to make this thing a success. I think time is on our side.